Hello, everybody. Welcome to Unit 6, Day 1. Today, we're going to be talking about the Wild West. And as I mentioned in the welcome video for this unit, when we think about the Wild West, we tend to think of the time period, a time period that happened much earlier than what it was in reality. I know when I used to think about the Wild West, I always thought about it of being the time like before the Civil War, Oregon Trail, people going out west, and that's the time thinking about the Wild West. But that's incorrect because the time known as the Wild West is actually going to be much later than what a lot of us think of, and it actually happens after the Civil War is going to be when you're going to have this time. Now, I always ask people when I start this unit, what kind of things do you think about with the American West or like the Wild West? People always say like cowboys and Indians and how about guns and shootouts and all kinds of different things like that, which all of that, again, very stereotypical of the West during this time. But I think it's because of our focus on that, we don't focus on when the actual time period was. So again, this unit covers 1877 to 1898, which is when you're going to be like the high time of the American West. So during this time, you're going to see a lot of Americans move out west. We had the Homestead Act, which came out during the Civil War, which encouraged people to move out west and gave them free land for moving out west. And so with that, you have people that go out there, they start farming, people start raising cattle and herding cattle during this time. That's going to be what is going to lead to the rise of the cowboy, because the cowboy was someone who basically kind of shepherd cattle and then would take those cattle to towns and to markets where they would be put on a train and then they would be taken somewhere else and be processed. And usually these towns are places that became very infamous. Abilene, Texas, or Abilene, New Mexico, El Paso, just these places that are going to become very infamous. Tombstone, Arizona, will be places that become very infamous in the Wild West and then are going to be later portrayed in movies by Hollywood as the Wild West. Now, it's always fun to think about with the Wild West that what was happening in the West during this time was directly related and connected to what was happening in the East, which was the Industrial Revolution. The example that I always like to use is you look, and when you think about the West, guns is always one of those things that comes up. And there's two very, very prominent guns during this time, the Winchester 1873, and then you have the Colt revolver, which also had different names, the Peacemaker, the Frontier gun. The Winchester was known as the gun that won the West. So you think about this image of, oh, this is the gun that won the West and all that kind of thing. Well, it only happened because both of those guns were made in Connecticut. So these guns are produced in Connecticut and then shipped out to the Wild West and would would conquer the frontier in a sense there. So don't forget that when we're talking about the Wild West. I know the Wild West is very, very interesting, thinking about the cowboys, the shootouts, just the image of this Old West that we get. And in a lot of ways, people kind of, when they think about America, they think about cowboys. If you talk to people from foreign countries and that kind of stuff, a lot of times they have that image of like the American cowboy. And a lot of that has to do with Hollywood and how the United States has been presented. But yeah, so the Wild West during this time. You're also going to see during this time interactions between different groups of people, such as interactions with the natives and the Indians there, and what was happening with the Indians as the Indians continue to be pushed off of their land. And you're going to start seeing efforts by the American government to try to figure out what to do with Indians besides just putting them on reservations, but maybe trying to integrate them into American society or assimilate them into American society and what exactly that would look like. So you'll read a little bit about that and about the Dawes Act and what it attempted to do, how it attempted to, in a sense, civilize the Indian during this time. You're also going to have interactions with Mexicans and Hispanics that are coming across the border. During this time, again, there was a completely open border and Mexicans would frequently come in here to work. You'll also have interactions with the Chinese who were coming in through California and who had come here to work on the Transcontinental Railroad, which they helped to build a large part of that during this time. So you're going to see with this, the American West, it incorporates a lot more than you would think of because, again, we don't tend to think about Hispanics and Chinese in the Wild West and what the response would be to those certain groups being here as well. Also, another thing that we don't generally think about because Hollywood never really presented this in old westerns, which is what a lot of people get their feelings about the American West on, is that you had lots of African Americans in the West as well. A large number of African Americans moved out west into places like Kansas and other areas, and took up the jobs of cowboys as well. So there was a lot more, I guess you could say, diversity in the West than what we think of, again, because a lot of this is produced by Hollywood and shaped by Hollywood in the 50s and 60s when they were producing things. And it was usually all whites being in these Hollywood productions, which then shaped our psyche and what we think of the West. So hope you enjoyed today. Learn about the Old West. I've thrown some video clips in there again, to show you kind of how our perspective has been shaped of the West during this time. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me and let me know. And I'd love to get to see you and get to talk to you. So I hope you have a fantastic day. Yippee-ki-yay.